So good day. And first item of first order of business is to look at the breakout of our scores overall for Module 2 assessment, and then do run a quick item analysis here. And so while that's running, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the print of that I just saved. Hello, good day. So overall, so you had a 5-point possible high score. The average was a 3.437, so close to a 3.5 average. If you consider that that's a percentage, close to 35, 3.5 is 70. The score ran a little lower than it often does, but basically we had someone who had a minimum score of a 0.6. I think they might have been in a hurry, or maybe there was a disruption. I'm not sure there. High score was 4.25, right? And the total number of points you could log was 5.5. So one of the things I want to stress with everybody is that we have some who are not doing reconciliations. And if you get close to a 5 and you say, well, I did good enough, I want you to realize the total possible points is actually a 5.5. So for the person who took and received the highest possible score here, if I take 4.25 and divide it instead by the total possible, that's a 77. So the idea here is to learn something well enough where you start to score or log credit on a mastery level. So this is good for a first attempt, but it's not where we want to be. So for the retake, we want to make sure everybody has a better chance. We had 8 individuals out of the class roster that scored in the 80s, 1 in the 70s, 2 in the 60s, 2 in the 50s, and then on down from there. Any questions about the distribution of scores in our assessment?
Nope. Was each one weighted the same points, each question?
I'm glad you asked that, and the answer is no, they all had different weightings. Let's see if all right, so we had 18 items. And you'll see from here that we didn't have any hard questions. And we didn't have any where everybody did so well that everybody answered the same way, and so the algorithm for Blackboard in their item analysis was thrown off and it said cannot calculate or poor questions. Although there were 3, so I think there are 3. I'm going to go ahead and sort by average score here. And so these are the questions that most everyone got correct. If the total possible was a half a point, 0.5, and the average score was a 0.4, then most everyone answered this one correctly. And so this was rated as a more medium question. So, in terms, usually we like to go for a mix between medium and easy on the first attempt, and then the retakes are harder. The retakes are a bit more, a good bit more sophisticated, but then people have had a chance to go back in and see where they went wrong, and then retake it. So what I'd like to do is start from the bottom up and work our way to about halfway up the list. When we get to the place where we've got where we have a 0.2 average score for a question that was multiple choice and it was worth 0.25, we're not worried about reviewing that so much. But in this case, a multiple answer question is usually worth 0.5, so people didn't do as well. So we're probably going to review all of the multiple answer and then the ones that run here. So let's take the first few. This question reads, which Linux command will display all files and directories in the order of creation to allow for quick reference of those most recently created or modified? This is basically out of the textbook and it's in the study guide. Are there any questions about this particular? This is the one we've used most commonly in demonstrations. It doesn't order them in the most recent. And I think most everybody remembered this from our solution video and said, oh, that's got to be the answer. But there is a better one. If you're listing files or directories and you want to see the ones you munged or wrangled last, this is the one you want to practice. Any questions? Okay.
No, I don't have any.
Okay. The user of a Linux system must create small data files and custom programs. The system does not have the capacity to connect to the internet. Question. If you can't connect to the internet, can you install new software from the internet? Hello?
No.
Not really. That's the answer. Yep. Not really. You can't really install stuff that so I'm pointing that out for a reason. There is no software of any kind installed. So you don't have Python with the RE library. You don't have Nano, a text editor. What is the quickest and most efficient way, the most efficient action that can be taken to start work? Well, you can use cat to start redirecting operators to create data files. That is the most efficient. If you use join on a nearby system, you don't have any connectivity. You're not connected to the internet. And join has to do with merging data files together. Use apt-get to install a basic text editor. We said we don't have the capacity to connect to the internet. Well, that's not an answer that's going to work. Does everybody understand why that answer is not a good answer?
I think I chose cat. I don't remember.
Yeah. You're going to see this answer a lot in your midterm, or well, in your final, right? And in the rest of the assessments, contact the system administrator. The whole point of us having modules and learning new methods is so that we do for ourselves. I'm just telling you right here and right now that sometimes I need a bogus answer. It's good to know that nobody's choosing this bogus answer. So there you have it. I need to see if I can capture. So now we have more participants showing. So let me update my, yeah. There we go. All right, moving right along. A most common method. A student performing scientific computing on an open source platform, you know, the PGBook or Linux, right, has executed the following commands. What common method is represented by the image shown? Well, okay, so they're capturing output to a data file, capturing output to a data file, and then they're joining the two, they're splicing the two together. You see cut and paste. It's munging or wrangling. The other term is wrangling. So data munging is one answer, data wrangling is the other. Both terms are used in the book and textbook, in the book and study guide. Any question about this item?
Nope.
Okay. Object linking and embedding is used in Office applications to link data between document files or data files. Okay. And data queries, that's what you do to analyze the data after you've collected the data with this method. So you're collecting and you're sanitizing or surgically processing. You're basically munging or wrangling the data. That's part of the data collection process. Data queries are part of the data analysis process that comes next. That's why it's not a good answer choice. Okay. Text editor required. To create a simple text file in a Linux environment, a text editor must be used. Nope. You can use cat. You can type on the screen using cat with the redirect straight to a file, so you don't need a text editor. You can also redirect the output of a command, but you can also use cat to just type line by line. That's regedit or regex. So you have somebody who's logged in on a Linux terminal shell. They're a super user. They want to create a new group using add group. They enter this, and a notice says, please enter a name matching the name regex configuration variable. What does this mean, and how should Linux user resolve this matter in the most expedient manner? In the study guide and in your textbook, basically, when you're not using an expression that has the regular conventions allowed, so think of reg as in regular, and then expression, right? EX for expression. So there's an acceptable expression that you use with commands. You would call that the regular expression. I'm trying to explain this differently. This does not conform to the regular expression that's expected for add group. Now you can do one of two things. The hard way to do this is to change the regex. You can modify the regex so it allows a broader range of options like other characters, but that gets into problems because regex is very plainly stated, and you shouldn't have spaces in the names. You shouldn't use certain special characters in the names that are reserved for other uses. You shouldn't have. So whenever you violate one of those things, like if you run too long a name, then it violates the regular expression policy in the system. So you can modify that. It's not recommended. The best way to do it is just to use a name that's in the proper format. Use an acceptable expression for the group name. In this case, the user should use add user in group. That's not going to solve the problem. This error is still going to occur. The RE module for Python has to do with working with text, and it does a lot of things with regular expressions. That's why it's called RE, but that's a different context and it's a different tool. Are there any questions about this?
None from me.
So if the question read, what library do I use to work with text or string values or characters most efficiently, you could say the RE module, because it's good at working with letters. It's designed to slice and dice words and letters, non-numerical data. Okay. So an Excel spreadsheet and Word document are used as templates to analyze numerous data sets that result from repeated experimental trials. While the graph created in the spreadsheet updates with changes in cells, the Word document never changes. if you read the rest of the detail in the assignment 2.3 for that Excel Olay submission, it explains all this. So it actually tells you what to do. What is the most likely cause of this problem? The original chart captured for use in Word was likely. So you try to use edit data in the Word document. Well, it's linked, it's not embedded. You're not trying to edit it directly after you've changed it in Excel. So you wouldn't want to edit the data in Word directly because you've already changed it in Excel. So use of Olay requires special formatting in red as an homage for legacy simulation. I was thinking of Matadors, right? Olay. I'm shocked. Maybe the context is frustrating because it could be that somebody doesn't know what a Matador is or how bulls like to charge red. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll think of a different bogus answer.
Yeah, that was clearly bogus.
Yeah, but it does require some, it does require some extra steps when you're formatting things. So
Yeah, I mean, I almost picked it because I saw the OLE, but upon reading.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this is an Olay scenario we're talking about right here with automatic updates. That's the literal definition of Olay. And I think that that's probably what somebody did, is that they were reading fast, working fast. They saw Olay and they said, oh yeah, the Olay isn't working right. The other options, the Word document was closed while Excel spreadsheet was updated with new data. That's a possibility. And I can see how some would choose that because that's part of the context. So I'm going to look at this question a little more, and I may give people extra credit who chose this item. Basically, if the Word document is closed when Excel is changed, then if the two are linked and then you open up Word, it should update. And if it doesn't, there's an extra command you can use where you just, and again, it's in the assignment document. So by itself, opening the Word document after the Excel spreadsheet would not cause the misfire. This is the more likely issue. So when people are doing, where do we go? When people are doing, so a lot of times when people are doing this, when they open up the Word document, it automatically updates, and if it doesn't, you can do something else. So here's the key. I think what I probably need to do going forward with the retake version of this is like italicize and underline the word never. So you have a case where it never updates, no matter what you do, even after you use edit data or update data, which normally triggers the connection and then updates the data, right? When that's the case, if it never changes, somebody copied the image of the chart, not the chart. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, it says the Excel.
Repeat that last part. Someone copied it the wrong way, like you pasted it the wrong way, or what is that?
Yeah, let's show you. Oh, no, wrong module. So let's say I select my chart, and then I go here, whoops. And I'm in a hurry and I use the Control C. Or I'm in a hurry and I got happy fingers. You know, maybe I'm using a tablet. I'm dragging my finger and I go too far. If I copy as a picture, that's an image. That's a JPEG now. That's like taking a picture of it with my smartphone. It's never going to change, right?
And you're saying Control C doesn't do that either. It just copies
Yeah,
the picture.
Control C shouldn't. But usually when people can't change anything, it's because they were in a hurry and they selected copy as a picture.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Good.
I've done it the wrong way a couple times. And, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, if you do it once and then you figure out what happened, you never do it again because it's just frustrating. Okay, here we go. So this is the last question we're going to answer, and then we're going to focus on the multi-answers because those were more challenging. The student is required to capture sensible detail about the amount of data that is stored on system disks and directories on the system before logging off. Now, if you didn't do the solution, or you did part of the solution, this item here would be a challenge. But it says the detail must be added to an existing log file called storageuse.dat. And then after capture, a statement must be posted at the end of the file that reads, so we're appending that statement to the end of the data file every time we capture. And then we're following with the date, right? That is literally the same thing we did for the solution, right? So what actions will create such a file per the criteria? Well, you enter the command df and you append to the storageuse.dat. That's what adds the data, the disk file data to the end of the file. And then you use echo to append the statement. So the word append here means this. And then you enter the command date, because that's append right here, the date to the end of that file. I just didn't have double arrows. So using cat to append the statement to storage.dat.
Yeah, that's what I chose for the one.
Yeah, the cat can be used to append data to the end of the statement, but you have to use echo. If you use cat and then you have the, I don't think cat works like that. I think if you get on the terminal and you try to do that.
Yeah, that's what now that I think about it, I think it'll like probably open it up, or you just wouldn't be able to issue that command and keep moving.
See, if you're trying to use cat, you're not catting an echoed statement. So the method to do that is a little different. That's why you had to echo. And we did that in the solution. And I mean, I guess if somebody wanted to do additional credit, you could try to get cat to work and prove to me that I'm wrong, and then I'll reverse the score for everybody here. If anyone is game to do that, you're welcome. There may be a way online where you could use cat to append with some other command that generates this text to the end. So there, there's a lot of creative ways to do things. But the one we demonstrated and documented, if you did the solution completely, was echo, and that's why that was the choice. This command overwrites. It defeats the whole point of the log. So you don't, if you do that once, the log file, so over time you want to see how much data is stored every time somebody gets finished, right? So a log file is a running record that accrues of the system activity. If you do this, you don't have a log, you have a single output of a single thing. You don't have a record or a log file anymore that shows what happened over time. So that's really dangerous. If you mix these two up, you overwrite all the data content with just the last piece that's added. And everything's gone except the last piece that was added. That's another thing where if you only do that mistake once and then you lose all your data, you're like, I'll never mix these two up. And we did have some students that selected that answer. So just remember, if you're going to do that, you wipe out all the previous entries. There is no log. It's just one output. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it overwrites.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll hit these last three multiple choice, and then we'll jump up to the multiple answers above that. So let's keep going. A value of a single cell in an Excel spreadsheet is used as a constant value for progressive calculations using a series of data values. So you have dynamic data values that are changing in a series, and then you have the static, the constant data. However, when the formula is copied down the series, filled down, all but one cell shows incorrect results. The most likely cause is the omission of an absolute cell reference using the $ character to anchor the column and the row. Some students answered this one. $1 character must be used. No, we have to use $2 characters, one for the column and one for the row. If we're only using $1 character, that's not going to fix the problem. Does everybody understand?
Yeah, I remember thinking that, catching that. Just it'd be right if it said 2.
Yep. Okay. Consider remote execution. So we did, by the way, I do want to compliment everyone. Not everyone finished the remote execution in the solution. So we still have directories that are missing in the SSH, the last section of the solution. And I'm hoping that people will finish and resubmit their solution. If you didn't finish that part of your solution before the deadline, you should go back and use SSH to complete section 4. What am I saying? If you finish section 4, I should see everybody's name in my remote system, and I don't. Yeah, there's like 6, 7 students that have not created their own directory on my system. They probably created their, see, and this is going to get interesting because I'm going to score your, so here, what am I saying? I'm giving you a chance to fix it before I nail you for trying to cheat.
Okay. Yes, thank you. I'll go back and fix it.
Okay, so let's say that again. Some of you may have done the command and created the directory on your own system and then taken a snapshot of it on your own system to make it look like you were on the remote system. But if I don't have it on my remote system, it means you did that on the local system, and you did things differently to make it appear. Every year, there's a couple of students that do that. It's like,
So,
we're missing this detail. So that's what happens, is that we're missing certain detail in the screenshot. It sticks out like a sore thumb, and then I have to tap people on the shoulder and say, really? You thought you'd slide this thing in on the side? Like you did it on your own machine, saying, oh, see, I did it. I just did it on my own machine. So if you're one of those, just submit a second. Just submit a second one. Get on the remote system. Use SSH. Finish. But I did want to thank everybody. By the way, who's unmuted on their mic and there's a lot of background noise? Can we ask everybody to mute, please? Okay. So this particular question has to do with remote access situations. And one of the things that we want to make sure that people understand is that a lot of times a couple of quick, simple habits can really screw things up. If you don't play nice, and there's literally a command called nice, right? There wasn't. there wasn't a question about that in particular on this assessment, but the retake would probably have that question. One of the things you're supposed to do is use no hup with an ampersand to run something. And that means that others can efficiently use the system while waiting for results with your work. So in terms of managing the workload on a remote system that's multi-user where dozens of people are engaged, everybody should be, if you're using a remote system when you run a job and it's going to take a while, use no hup and the ampersand. And that's in the study guide, and it's also in the textbook. If you do this, you're creating a shell script that has nothing to do with working remotely. If you're doing this, no hup and omit the ampersand, it doesn't work when you log out. So it's important to include the ampersand, because without that, that whole method doesn't work right. Any questions about this? And by the way, for those of you that were on the remote system, you did a proper job. Nobody else's Kool-Aid was messed with, and I was very impressed with everybody's willingness to work with the honor system just to do that one assignment, that one part of the assignment. But it's really not the way to work on a real system live with dozens of users. And if you got to that section and you were uneasy about the whole thing and you're like, oh, I don't want to screw something up, that's the other value in embedding that whole thing in your assignment, in your solution. We want to cultivate in people best practices. And if you did exactly what the video showed, you wouldn't have had a problem. And there were a number of people that didn't get that done. But the ones that did everything to a T they were supposed to do. And I did offer to walk through with people. So if you want to resubmit solution 2, and you just want me to walk you through that last part, just send me an email that says, I'd like to do that, okay? All right. Resolving access errors. So you would like to resolve errors that occur whenever anyone, meaning that's the piece of the command that has to do with everyone. This is the piece of the command that has to do with the group, and this is the piece of the command that has to do with the owner. You would like to resolve errors that occur when anyone attempts to view the contents of an important text file you own that provides essential procedures and help. So the idea is you have this text file, and everybody's going to reference it because it's going to help them with their methods, and it's going to provide assistance or helpful hints, right? So everybody has to be able to read it. You verify that the correct ownership and group editors. So one of the things that can go wrong is that the owners isn't assigned right, or the groups isn't assigned right, and people can't access it because the wrong ownership and wrong group are assigned. But this tells you verify that the correct ownership and group is assigned. So the editor's group is assigned. The file is located in the references directory and is called essentials.txt. So we give you all the essential information for that scenario that you need. As the owner of the file, you want all rights enabled. Now, maybe I should have underlined that and made it really big. So you could issue this command without actually technically providing executable privilege to the owner, but I said I want all. So any answer that doesn't have a 7 for the first number and any answer that doesn't use change mode would be incorrect, which means this can be eliminated. Nobody fell for that. That's good. Although sometimes people don't know the differences between those commands, and they see that's the one answer that's different, and they go, okay, it has to be this one. So I'm glad that that didn't fool anybody. But this one fooled people. This provides read and execute privileges this provides execute privileges, but not read privileges. So they still can't read it. Does anyone want me to show you what I mean by that? Should I?
But, so that if they can read it but not execute, they'll just look at it and not be able to change anything or use commands.
Yeah, all right, so let's do this. Can everybody see this?
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the weird things about, whoops. One of the weird things about permissions in Linux is that you have switches, read, write, and execute. And sometimes you have dashes that show. I didn't want that. I don't want this to, so in Linux, when you see this, what it means is that the number for this is turned off. There's all sorts of ways to explain how change mode permissions work with numbers. And your textbook describes it as it's an octal number. And then you get into number theory. Okay, I'm using base 8 instead of base 2. It's not a binary scenario. It's not a decimal number. It's an octal number. And that's part of the perspective of the authors that I think is needlessly complicated. I'm gonna try to explain this differently. Let's pretend that this is for the owner privileges, right? Whenever there's a 1 here for read, then this value, all right, so this is, I want you to think of this as binary, not octal. So we're gonna say 2 to the first, no, to the second. And then, come on now. To the first. And then 2 to the 0. And maybe there's a YouTube video out there that's much simpler to explain. I don't want you to think in octal terms like the textbook talked about. And we had some quick examples in the study guide. And in one of the references for Linux commands, it tells you explicitly, it actually shows you those set of numbers. But I want to explain what's going on here. So in the decimal number system, we use 3-digit decimal numbers like 237. And if we have a decimal number like 2, oh crap, 2 and 3 and 7, we've done this all our lives. If we have a decimal number, a base 10 number, we know that the 7 here is in the ones column, the 3 is in the tens column, and the 2 is in the 100s column. And intellectually, we don't think, okay, this number is 7 times 10 to the 0, which is 1, 7 times 10 to the 1 power, which is 10, so it's 3 times 10, and 2 times 10 to the second. This is the hundreds column. We don't think in those terms. It's natural for us. We have 10 fingers and toes. We grew up with this. We don't even think. In base 10 number system, this is the first place or column for the decimal, the base 10 number system is literally 10 to the 0, which means if you have any number in there, you have to multiply by 10 to the 0. So if I have a 4 there, it's 4 times 10 to the 0, or in other words, 4 times 1. Okay? In this system, all right, so we know this is 3 10s and 2 100s. Everybody with me so far?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Okay.
So it's always raise the 2 and then raise the 1 in those slots, no matter what the number is. So,
Yep.
like if it's
Yep. Now, here's the fun part. And this is why I don't want you to use the octal method that the book tells you. Okay? I'm going to get rid of this decimal example here. 2 to the 0 is actually what we have on this lower line. What we really have is this. Instead of 1, 10, and 100, instead of having 1, 10, and 100s, we're not, all right, so for this particular thing, 2 to the 0 power is 1, and then 2 to the first power, if you think of this arrangement as a binary scenario instead of an octal scenario, and please don't replay this recorded explanation to the math professors, because they'll roll their eyes and say, well, it also works for octal, you just got to come at it from a different way. I'm trying to explain this in binary terms. In binary terms, the 1 is the on, the 0 is the off. Let's repeat that again. In binary terms, when you have a 1 in a column, it's on. When you have a 0 in a column, it's off. So for read, write, execute, yeah?
yeah. So is that saying the 4 would be off?
The 4 is off, the 2 is on, and the 1 is on. What number, if you add those two together, what number in decimals does that make? Or octal does that make? Same difference. What's 2 plus 1?
That'd be 3.
Right. So if you put change mode 3 something something, the owner can write and execute, because write and execute is turned on, but read is not, it's turned off. So if you use change mode 7, what that means is that I'm putting a 1 here, I'm turning on that bit level. This is bit level operations. Basically, you can explain it with octal mathematics, but it's better to think on the bit level. So this is kind of in the weeds here, but in Linux, read, write, execute for owners, then you have another 3, read, write, execute for groups, then you have another 3, read, write, execute. Each of those 3 number combinations code to numbers 0 through 7. What am I saying? You could have 0, 0, and 0, in which case you'd have 0 and, oh, I'm sorry, let's put that back. So this is the 1's place, the 2's place, and the 4's place. If I have a 0, 0, and 0, change mod 0, 0, 0, then what I'm saying is that the read is turned off, the write is turned off, and the execute is turned off. Let's give a different scenario here. If I say change mode 5 something something, change mode 555, I'm turning on the read, I'm turning off the write, and I'm turning on the execute. But because it's the third column, I'm taking this 1 in binary, and that's equal to 4 in the decimal or octal number system. Either way. So octal numbers run from 0 to 7. Decimal numbers run from 0 to 9. Or maybe octal is 0 to 7. There's 8 numbers. If I turn this off, 2 is not active. So when I'm adding these numbers together, I have a 4 plus a 1. That means read, execute is a 5. Read, write, and execute is 4 plus 2 plus 1. It's a 7. If I do this, and I put this, if I say a 6, one of the numbers for the change mod command, one of the 3 numbers is a 6, then what I'm doing is saying I'm adding 4 and 2. So from 0 to 7, you're turning on one or the other of these attributes. If you turn on read, it's a 4. If you turn on write, it's a 2. If you turn on execute, it's a 1. And if it's turned on, you add that number to the total for that group. And this is just one of the 3. What am I saying? In here, everybody see read, write, execute?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Read, write, execute for the owner, read, write, execute for the group, read, write, execute for everyone. Here, there's a dash, which means it's off. There's a 0. So I have a 4 and I have a 1, but I don't have a 2. The current state of this is 7, 7, 5. Read and execute for everyone, but not change or write. So when you're making changes with the change mod command, you're using numbers. The first number is the owner, the second number is the group, and the third number is the everyone else in the world. And what you have to remember is that if there's a dash, it's turned off, which means that there's a 0. The bit level operator on that function is turned off, which means you don't execute. So execute is turned off, but write and read is turned on. And the value for that with the change mod command is 4 plus 2 or 6. So if I use a 6 for any of those 3 designations, owner, group, or individual, I can read it, I can write it, but I can't execute it if it's an executable. Okay? I don't know if that helps explain things, but that's how you work change mod on a granular level. And when you need to interpret it, you need to interpret it in this context. Anytime you see a dash, it means it's a 0, it's turned off. So here I have, let's see what, somebody ran a change mod command here. I can read and I can write, but I can't execute. So I have, what they did was they did a change mod 664. That turned on read and write, it turned on read and write, and the 4 only turns on read. The 4 only turns on read. The other 2 were off, so I had a 0 here and a 0 there. That's what you're seeing here. Is any of this helpful, what I'm explaining?
Yeah, I got it now.
Okay. Now, you can watch other YouTube videos or you can research it online, but basically, you do need to understand how to change permissions and change ownership with those commands. And unfortunately, that's one thing about Linux that's really not that simple to explain all the time. So there's another, I just gave you the alternate way of explaining this. And just remember that each one of those single digit numbers codes for all of the read, write, and execute privileges for a single group or single security entity. So the owner, the group, and everyone else, those are called security principals. They're security accounts or groups. This is everyone. This well, the last three values here have to do for everyone. These three in the middle have to do for group permissions, and these have to do with owner permissions. I'm beginning to think I need to have like a separate 15-minute video and a worksheet to explain that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I followed along, but a review would probably help or something, you know, or to watch the class again.
Now, whenever you see a D, that means that we're talking about a directory. The permissions apply to the entire directory, right? So that's a file. This is a directory. If you see a dash first, that means it's a file, not a directory. If you see a D, it means a directory. Are there any questions about this? So change mode 651 would give us read, write. It would give us read and execute. And it would give us just execute. And the problem is that you got to be able to read. The keyword here is you want everybody to be able to, everyone to read. When we're reading, we're dealing with this column. It's the 4. So you have to have a 4 in your column for execute. We need to have a 4. So read and write is 6. We said editors are going to be able to read and write. If this was 7.5, it would mean that they could read and execute, but they couldn't write it or change it. And editors are supposed to be able to edit. So that's why this one didn't work. Okay. So 5 is a number that says for the group, I have 4 turned on, the read. I don't have the middle one turned on, 2 for write, which means I can't edit. But I have the execute turned on. And that's, yeah. So 5 means the execute is turned on with the read and execute. A lot of times you want users to not be able to change anything and just read and execute. So a safe change mode command in most cases is 755 if you want the world to be able to read and execute anything you have in a directory. If you don't want them to execute, but you just want them to reference the stuff, don't turn on the execute, right? Because if somebody puts a script in there and they click on it, they'll launch malware. That's a tricky, nasty malware. That's what hackers do. They put executable stuff in there and then people go clicking on it. And if it's formatted the right way, it'll start running instead of opening. And if they have execute privileges turned on, then it's a runaway freight train. So in general, it's good to go 750. So the owner can do anything. The editors can read and execute. Well, the group can read and execute. And then everyone else in the world can't do anything because you don't want anybody in your Kool-Aid. So 750 is actually the best permission issue in most cases. Unless everyone needs to read it, in which case it'd be 754 or 764 if there's editing involved. So, okay. Does anybody have any other questions about the rest of the assessment items before we close?
None from me.
Okay.
No.
Command failure here, we could look at this one real quick, multi-answer. Okay, a researcher has a custom Python application that's stored in the directories of the current home profile, and that the current updated version of the Python is properly loaded on the system. So we said if something isn't running, it could be it's not installed or updated. They could be in the wrong place, or they could have the wrong permissions. However, the commands to use the tool fail repeatedly. Following are potential causes of this common error. So proper permissions aren't there. The researcher is trying to run from within another directory. One thing in particular we said is that if you have a custom Python or a software application that you've developed and you don't use // in front of it when you issue the command, even if it's in the directory, it won't run. And that was something we explicitly explained in class and demonstrated. I actually tried to run something and I didn't use / and it didn't run. And then, yeah, the other two choices, the Python application is not installed. Well, we just said it's properly loaded on the system. So that's a bogus answer choice because we've already established that it is properly loaded. That's not a source of the problem. Proper ownership has not been set using chown. Ownership with chown has nothing to do with permissions. You assign ownership to a file system resource, a file or directory with chown, change ownership. But permissions has to do with change mod. Okay. If we had a question about ownership and it said you don't own this, you can't do anything with it, then we'd have a change ownership option. Any questions?
No, I don't have any.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.